Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast broadcasting from the back of an abandoned Best Buy in downtown Harbor City. I'm Chris Daly, and tonight I'd like to welcome Patrick Coyle to the show. Patrick, what's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's nice to be here in the back in the store in Harbor City. I haven't been in this place in a long time. Look at all this
Awesome.
stuff.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah, man, I usually like to try to have a custom intro every time I have a new episode. Sometimes I try to find a way to tie it into, a comic or whatever we're talking about. Sometimes I just do some other random shit, but I thought that one would be kind of work pretty good.
I
So
love it. I love it.
awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, well, again, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to talk to you. Been a fan for a long time.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
I'm very, very stoked for this. And usually when we start these things off, I usually like to start these off with an icebreaker question.
Hmm.
So today's icebreaker question is, you're going on a trip anywhere, doesn't really matter. But you either can have a beach holiday or a ski trip.
Hmm.
What one would you choose?
Well, I don't ski, so I'm gonna go beach.
Perfect. That's actually my answer too, because I actually talked about this on the last episode with my guest. He said he's recently got into snowboarding and skiing and he thinks it's really a lot of fun, which I've
Sure.
heard that's the case.
Yep.
I've never been ever either one of them. And the weird thing about that is I live in Idaho and there's snow everywhere. Well, except for this year. There's really not much snow this year, which is kind of abnormal. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's snow everywhere, and it's weird that I live so close to where you can ski, and I've never done it before. A lot of
Yeah.
people are like, "How?"
Yeah. I live in the Northeast, and it's we had a ton of snow in the last
Yeah.
month or two. Yeah, we had literally 4 feet of snow. um,
Jesus.
which is pretty unusual.
Yeah.
I live in central Massachusetts, and there's a mountain, 20 minutes from here that you can go skiing pretty much every year. But we got dumped on this year, and yeah, I tried snowboarding when I was in my 20s, and I fell on my face all day, and I was like, nope, that's it. That's enough for me. Thank you. Um, People love it. My brother-in-law skis. He keeps his skis in his car the way some people keep golf clubs in the back just in case.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I know people love it. It's not for me.
That's fair. And skiing or snowboarding and falling on your face all day long, that's a perfect 20-year-old thing to do.
Yeah,
Any older than that, like I just turned 41 this year. There's no
yeah.
way I'm gonna go spend all day falling on my face. Absolutely not.
No way in hell. Nope.
It'll be a hell of a day the next day for sure.
Oh yeah. I think a couple of weeks.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. All right, man. So, with the concept of Fueled by Weird, it's all the things that you're into, your hobbies, your interests, all that stuff. They kind of come together to make you who you are as a person. So, when we're not dealing with comics or stuff like that, what are some of your hobbies and interests? What are some of the things you're into?
It's not that weird, but I'm a big baseball and football fan.
That's okay.
I've also recently started watching a lot of hockey because my 16-year-old daughter really got into hockey this year.
Oh, nice.
And so that's kind of cool. It also happened to coincide with the Olympics, so we got to kind of have fun watching all the Olympic hockey games. But so yeah, sports. I'm an Eagles fan. I'm a Red Sox fan, and I'm a Phillies fan. And people say that's at odds, but I have enough room in my heart for two baseball teams.
There you go. And yeah, sports isn't necessarily the typical weird, but that's okay because, weird really can be defined really any sort of way. You could
Yeah,
be into like, I could be into knitting really big hardcore, and that could be what fuels my weird. So
sure.
weird's really just a abstract concept, I think, at this point. So,
Yeah,
you're a sports nerd, and that's okay. So there's different kinds of nerds for everybody, and
there are.
being into sports is not a bad thing.
I
For,
still, I'm a huge comic nerd, but
yeah.
aside from making them, I'm still really into reading them and talking about them and all that kind of stuff. I'm a huge movie buff. I am also I'm really into design. So I went to school. I went to art school. I went to school for illustration and for design, and I
Mhm.
love graphic design. I love typography. I kind of wonk out on some of those details that not everybody's into. So I
Yeah.
guess that would be a little on the weirder side for some folks.
That's okay. Yeah, I tried the whole sports thing when I was younger. I was pretty into sports a little bit, but
Yeah.
then I got older and I decided that unscripted sports was the sport for me. So I'm a big pro wrestling guy. I still kind of follow sports a little bit,
Okay.
sports ball sports, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm way more into scripted sports now.
I do love wrestling. I'm not a
Yeah.
huge wrestling fan, but I really have started to appreciate it over the last 10 years. Like I grew up
Yeah.
with it. I grew up
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
Hulk Hogan and that whole crew and
Hmm.
Randy Macho Man Savage and the whole
Oh
thing.
yeah,
I mean, you couldn't get away from it when I
for
was a
sure.
kid, right?
Yeah.
And then as I got older, when I lived in New York City, I went to see a steel cage match with Brett, what's his face?
Bret Hart.
Yep, Bret Hart,
Nice.
and it was the first time I'd ever seen it in person, and it was phenomenal. It was you really get into it. That's when I started to really appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh,
Seeing
for
it on
sure.
TV and people talking trash about it and saying, "Oh, it's fake" and all that shit. It's so intense, and the crowd really makes it real, right? So like
For
people who
sure.
are into it, it's like going to see a band you don't know, and
Hmm.
the crowd's really into it, and you kind of get into it. It's the same
Yeah.
thing, right? So
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect. I mean, they are athletes. I know it's
Mhm.
scripted,
Yeah.
but I would like to see anybody who makes fun of wrestling get up there and try one of those moves and not break a hip.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
you know,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, it's wrestling is pretty badass.
Yeah. And I mean, for the scripted part, most of, some of the hits are fake hits. They're staged hits like punches and kicks and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But, the biggest thing that's scripted is just who's going to win. That, I
that's
mean,
right.
a lot of the
Right.
other stuff is very, very physical. And I've been a pretty lifelong fan, and of course, growing up in the 90s, pro wrestling was, and especially in the late 90s, pro wrestling was like the coolest thing ever. And
Yeah.
it's kind of starting to come back to that a little bit now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard to escape for sure. And yeah, definitely seeing it in real life is a game changer for sure. I know years ago, back before my oldest daughter's 18 and before she was born, my buddy and I we drove 4 hours to go to a wrestling show, and it wasn't one of the ones that was broadcast on TV. It was one of like the live events where it's just kind of like, just for the people in attendance, which those ones are kind of more fun because, the wrestlers can be a little bit more not as strict and they can relax and have a little bit more fun.
Sure.
And my wife went with us, and at the time she was like, "Wrestling's so stupid. I hate it. I don't know why you guys are so into it."
Yeah.
But after, like you said, after seeing it in real life, like you get a whole different aspect, a whole different respect for it, and it's very, very intense. And my oldest daughter, she likes wrestling a little bit. She has, certain people she likes to watch, but she's never seen it in real life before. The closest we got was there was a show right before COVID that was about 4 hours away that we almost went to, but then we ended up not going. And so she really would like to see it in person someday. But
Sure.
yeah, seeing it in person is a whole different thing.
It is. It really is. And I love the like the local and regional ones too, where you just go to
Yeah,
like
the
a
indie stuff.
gymnasium. Yeah,
Hmm.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And I love it's so punk rock. Like it
Oh
just
yeah.
that's how it naturally came up in the
Hmm.
60s and 70s before it became, big business.
Yeah.
It's just so cool and it still goes on. Like you can, if you go on the internet, you can find probably one near you and it's
Yeah,
just
they're going
sorry,
on
go ahead.
all the time. No, you're good. Yeah, they go
Yeah,
on all the time, all over the
it's
place.
awesome. Yeah,
And a lot of the big name guys, that's how they got their start was that way.
totally.
Um, but it's really nice is you go to those shows and they're super appreciative that you're there. Like you said, it's like
Yeah.
going to see a band play. They
Yep.
really are into it, and it's really cool to kind of see the grassroots starts of where a lot of that stuff comes from.
Totally.
Absolutely. All right, man. So first, I want to talk something about giving spotlight to indie books. So, I'm following you on social media, and you shout out indie books all the time.
Hmm.
A lot of us do, because there's a lot of great books out there that need some extra attention. Um, and you've been doing it for a long time, especially with the company you have found, Comic Works.
Yeah.
You kind of, to me, that kind of seems like like the birthplace of, kind of like where global comics has come from. Because it kind of does the same thing in a way where it
Yeah.
kind of, helps indie comics, get out there, be seen. So that's really cool that you've been kind of, pushing the bandwagon for indie comics for all this time. Um, I want to talk just a little bit about, I know you're not really affiliated with them anymore, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about, how the idea for Comic Works came together and how that all happened.
Sure. Back in the late 90s, that's how long ago this was. I've been a web designer for 30 years. They call them UX designers now. They used to call them
Yeah.
web designers.
Mhm.
So I was working as a web designer in the late 90s, still trying to get into comics. And I picked up an indie book from Antarctic Press, which is still around.
Mhm.
And there was this great comic called High Stakes Adventure, I think. And it was like an anthology, black and white anthology, I think. Maybe it was color. It was by this guy that I'd never heard of named Shannon Eric Denton. And I looked him up he had his URL on the back. So I looked him up and he had his website and it looked like it could use a little help. And I was like, maybe this guy would help me with my comics if I helped him with his website. So I emailed him and he said, yeah, my wife put together this website. And I was like, oops, sorry.
Oh man.
I didn't say anything horrible. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
if you ever need help with your website, he's like, she admits she doesn't know what she's doing. Hi, Kristen, if you're out there. And so I help him revamp his website and do a couple things. We became friends. He lived in LA. I lived in the Northeast. And when I would go out there, we met in person a couple of times and just kind of, became friends. And then I don't know, maybe that was like 98, something like that. And then late 99, I was doing a lot of small freelance work for web design. And I was like, you know what? We could just make our own site. Like it turns out Shannon, so he used to be, well, since we've founded Comic Works back in 2000, he went on to be an editor at Wildstorm, and he's worked for a bunch of different publishers and video game companies. He used to be an animator and an art director and a character designer. He used to work for Rob Liefeld in the 90s at
Oh
Awesome
wow.
Studios. And yeah, and he's one of those guys. I think everybody knows one of these people, one or two of these people who just knows everybody. Like
Yeah.
Shannon is really good. He's a people person, and he's just chatting everybody up. Everybody loves Shannon. He stays in touch with people, and so when I found out, the nature of his kind of network, I was like, you know what? With all your contacts and with my abilities, we could maybe put together a website and have people publish their indie stuff, and it actually be pretty good. Because he knew tons of animators and some indie comic folks who wanted to get their stuff out there. At the time, there was a big barrier in that Diamond, which just went out of business and screwed a lot of creators over last year,
Mhm.
was the only game in town. And so, unless you could get an ad in there, which cost $1,200 even back then,
Oof.
for a full page ad, in a telephone book, if younger viewers know what that is, a big thick catalog that used to come out every month,
Yeah.
and try to get ad space in there and try to sell something in physical and have it distributed to all the local comic book shops, you weren't really going to sell anything unless you went to a local show, but you still had to pay to have it printed. And so this was a way to have people distribute it for free. The internet wasn't really where it is now, where everybody's used to the whole freemium idea, which is you get a little bit for free and you pay to upgrade to get the really good stuff, and you pay to the pro level to get the really good stuff, right? So back then, we just posted it all for free. We ran some interviews with people. We had some big names, actually. We worked with Keith Giffen. We worked with Dwayne McDuffie. We worked with Ernie Colon, who's an old Marvel guy. But they were all doing create their own stuff too.
Yeah.
So yeah, we also put out a series of digest-sized anthologies, black and white. We would only sell maybe 300 to 500 copies of that. And we worked on this for, I don't know, 9, 10 years. And we really hustled. We did San Diego for 10 years straight. We did a couple other shows. We published a series of illustrated novels for kids called Actionopolis. And Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of cool stuff. But ultimately, what happened was Shannon had kids, I got married and had kids, and things just got too busy, and we couldn't maintain the business any longer. So it still technically exists, and you can go to comicworks.com, KOMIKWERKS, for those who haven't heard of it or seen it spelled. But it's still there. You can still go see some free comics on there. But we had a blast. Like we made a ton of friends. We published a lot of stuff. We got to work with Stan Lee for a little while.
That's awesome.
We had this thing called Stan Lee's Sunday Comics. It was a very early paywall for comics online, and we had originals that we put out every Sunday, and people paid $5 a month, Not that many people paid, but a few people paid $5 a month for this. And of course, Stan's name got us out in the papers and the media a little bit,
Sure.
but just didn't pick up traction. People weren't ready to pay for content back then. People didn't have their phones yet. They weren't ready for Webtoon or any of that kind of stuff. So we didn't really, I'll be perfectly honest, we didn't know where it was going to go. We were just like, let's try some things. Let's throw some shit at the wall, see what sticks. And we had a lot of fun. And I made a friend for life with Shannon and some other great people that we got to know. So yeah, that's how that happened. And I'm still friends with Shannon. If you signed up for my newsletter, you saw me give him a shout out this week in his new company, Monster Forge Productions, which is doing some great stuff too. Shout out to Shannon and Kristen, who are still making good stuff.
Very awesome. So yeah, you got to work with Stan Lee, Dwayne McDuffie. That's so rad. And
It was cool.
you guys were kind of like the godfather of global comics. So that's pretty awesome.
There were a few other players at the time too. Digital Webbing, I don't know if you remember them.
Hmm.
And I know I'm forgetting the other, but we had a few competitors that were trying to do similar things. Everyone had a little bit different take on it. Like some people just took the books and digitized them. Some people formatted them, to fit a screen. So it was kind of the Wild West, and it wasn't really what it is now, where things are kind of standardized, which is good because it makes
Yeah,
it's a little easier to publish your stuff and understand how to format it. But yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
that's cool. Yeah, you guys were definitely ahead of your time, but that's very, very cool. And yeah, I think the digest size I think is a really cool idea. And I know that's starting to make a big comeback. Shout out to Rolling Squid Bones. My dude Chad Perkins, his company's kind of doing that same thing. They're adapting all of their books to kind of fit that digest size, and
Oh,
I think
nice.
it's a really cool idea for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, awesome. It also keeps costs down if you're going to go print. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to take a trip in the Wayback Machine and go all the way back to find out what it was that, originally inspired you to become a writer in the first place.
Well, the idea since I was 11 was to always write and draw my own comics. And when I was in middle school, a couple friends and I started our own comic company called Andromeda Comics, and we drew it on typewriter paper or copier paper,
Nice.
and made photocopies at my dad's office. And we made a quarterly anthology with like had 5 stories. It was like 100 pages. We'd staple it together and we'd sell it to, friends of the family and stuff. And we got into like the local yokel paper, like the,
Nice.
the, the really small town paper, but like it was
Yeah.
fun. And so I knew that's what I always wanted to do. I went to art school. But when I got out, I was like, I can't make a living as a freelancer. Like, it just doesn't suit my personality. I need
Yeah.
more stability than that. And frankly, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't the type of guy. When you go to a show or to a convention and you see an artist in their booth, they're just drawing all the time. It turns out that they are doing that no matter where they are. It's not just because they're at a convention. And I'm
Yeah.
not one of those guys. It took me a long time to figure that out, but I got out. I did do art related stuff and eventually ended up doing web design. And the dream was still for many, many years. I'll one day I'll go back and I'll start drawing again and I'll do my comics. And I had the idea originally for Bix when I was um, in college, and I still actually have the original sketches over here,
That's
um,
cool.
and the idea kind of gelled and then percolated for a long time, like 15, 20 years, honestly. And it always got better, I think, because as I grew older, I learned more about storytelling and what does and doesn't work. And um, but so when we started Comic Works, the idea was for Shannon and I to publish our own shit because we weren't making headway really with just submitting to other publishers. So we're like, fuck it, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And we'll bring our friends with us, right? And to be fair, it's mostly Shannon's friends because he knew all the professionals. But so yeah, I did one Bixby Grant short story in one of our digests back in 2005. It kind of sucked. The art was great, but the story was horrible. It was really the first thing I had written in many, many years. But I still always wanted to do it. And Shannon was always nagging me. He's like, when are you going to do more Bix? Even after we stopped Comic Works, he's like, when are you going to do Bix? And so finally, during the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I got to get off my ass. Like a lot of us during the pandemic, we
Yeah.
reevaluated our time here
Hmm.
on Earth, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I got it. It's now or never. So I sold like half of my collect collection, or the valuable part of my collection, and funded the first issue. And I had we all have the Notes app on our phone, right? So that Notes app is full of ideas and little
Oh yeah.
bits that I've been writing down, since I got an iPhone back in the late aughts.
Hmm.
And so I pulled that thing out, started jotting things down, making it a little more concrete, and made sort of myself a little tiny writer's Bible. Like here are the general rules of how he works, like how him being a mummy works, and then started fleshing it out. I would bounce the idea off of other people, and kind of built it out from there. Um, yeah, sorry, I get really long-winded. Did I
No,
answer your question?
you're so good, dude. Like, yeah, you
Okay.
just I kind of just, start the conversation and you
Yeah.
finish it however you want. And so
Okay. All
there's
right.
nothing to apologize for. You're super good.
All right. Good.
Um, but yeah, I just love listening to stuff like that. So that's really, really cool. Um, so kind of to pivot just a little bit for a minute.
Yeah.
Um, what was it that got you interested in comic books in the first place? I know you said that, you kind of had the idea since you were a kid to
Yeah.
do comics, but what was it that got you like, yeah, comics are what I want to do.
So the comic that I would point to that really got me into it was the Marvel adaptation of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was my
Okay.
favorite comic. I had had a few comics up until then, like most kids. When you get sick, your parents stop at the drugstore to pick up a couple of things, and they grab you a couple of comics off the rack, kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call myself a collector. And then in fifth or sixth grade, I got the Raiders of the Lost Ark um, adaptation, as well as some Star Wars stuff. So like Lucas and Spielberg got me into comics more or less.
Okay. Nice.
John Buscema drew that issue. Walter Simonson wrote it. I didn't know who they were at the time, but would go on to become huge fans of both of their work.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
and it and it got I just loved visual storytelling. I at the time I couldn't put my finger on that's what was the appeal of it.
Yeah.
But I just started picking up. I had this was back when we actually had like spinner racks like this at your local drugstore, or also your gas station or what have you. And so I could ride my bike down there and get comics every week. And so I knew they came out on Tuesday. I'd go down, I'd spin it around, get a couple things, and became a pretty avid collector. And then when we got into middle school, I was what you call a late bloomer. So a lot of the other kids got into more adult themes before I did. And so comics was became my refuge of being kind of a nerdy left behind kid for a little while.
Yeah.
I had some friends. I don't want to paint myself as like some dweeb who just cowered in the corner while everybody else went about their business, but I was definitely, uh, uh, bookish, nerdy, and but I always loved creating stuff. I remember sitting at my desk when I was a kid and just drawing for hours and hours. And I was drawing a story, but I wasn't always putting words to it. But I could tell what was going on. So, and when I got into high school, I started writing more, like short stories and scripts and things like that, and making some comics as well. And that's kind of how that all came to be.
Very cool. And you can't be part of a nerdy podcast without being in good company with, the nerdy kids in school that didn't really have a lot of friends. So you're
Yeah,
you're in good company for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I
Yeah,
figured this is a safe space.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, I kind of want to get to the big show now. I want to talk about the man himself, Bixby Grant. So, for those that don't know about your series, Bixby Grant Private Eye, why don't we take a little minute here to talk about it?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the basic premise is this. Bixby Grant was a 1930s beat cop who broke up a museum heist. And in the process, he unleashed the curse of the pharaoh and became a living mummy. So now he's immortal, and he's a private eye and has been for a long time. Over the course of the last 100 or so years, he's seen a lot of stuff. He fought in World War II. He fought in some other things. He was a crime buster for a little while. He was a private detective for many, many years. All his friends and family are now dead and gone, and he's a miserable little bastard still living in the same town that he was since he was born during the Great Depression.
Wow.
So he just wants to be left alone, but trouble always seems to find him, and that's the basic premise. He only takes jobs when he absolutely has to, probably to keep the power on or pay for cigarettes. He doesn't have to eat, so he just wants booze and cigarettes.
It's fair.
He's hoping that maybe those will slowly kill him, because he's immortal and
Sure.
he can't really die. But
Yeah.
so yeah, so now he solves supernatural crimes. The city where he lives, Harbor City, is a fictional kind of Midwestern boom town from 100 years ago that has now fallen on hard times. And since Bix became a mummy, we'll see why in future issues. But over since that time, Harbor City has also become a magnet for other supernatural folk, and so it's become populated with werewolves and vampires and wizards and all kinds of other people, and hence a lot of his cases revolve around the supernatural too.
Very cool. So pretty much, any weird thing that can happen is going to happen in Harbor City.
Yeah, yeah. I would say
Yeah.
the quick pitch is if you like Hellboy, if you like Batman the Animated Series, and if you like The Shadow, this kind of ticks a little bit of each of those boxes. It's got some pulpy elements to it. It's got, he's got dueling 45s that he likes to fire off, and he's wearing a fedora and a tie, and but it's got kind of a tone, a visual tone of Batman the Animated Series, and it's also got um, mysteries and not quite as like Hellboy gets really, really eccentric and it goes really deep for the kind of folklore that it mines.
Yeah.
Mine is not quite that, but it does have kind of the attitude of Hellboy, I would say, as a character.
Very, very cool. Now, first question, was his name always Bigsby even before he was a mummy, or was that like a name he adapted after he turned into the mummy?
Oh, so in no, that was always his name. His birth name was Bixby Grant.
Okay,
His,
that's awesome.
yeah,
Very, very cool.
yeah.
Now, where did you get the inspiration to kind of go with the mummy theme, or how did you, come up with that character?
There was I don't know, did you watch the She-Hulk show that was on
I
uh
did.
okay, so Mr. Immortal was on that show.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Do you know that character? He was
Uh-huh.
introduced in the Great Lakes Avengers in the early 90s, and his entire power set is that he just can't die. So like he'll fall off a building and then his bones will all break, he'll stand back up and they'll snap into place. And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. What if, you had a hero that's it." Like he wasn't a vampire. So he didn't have to deal with like the thirst and the hunger, but he
Yeah.
could live forever. I'm like, who else could do that? And so I started to think about that, and I was like, oh, well, what about a mummy if they're brought back to life? They would be invulnerable. I mean, not I love the Universal monsters. I should start off with as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So like the old, Universal monster, I mean, like Scooby-Doo mummy, they're really slow and they, got their arms out and but so I wanted to have the soul of a modern day person in the body of a mummy, and then I kind of made up my own rules too. But um, uh, so yeah, that was the basic germ of the idea was who can be immortal, but not have the baggage of like a werewolf or a vampire or some of the other things that um, which I love, and obviously I've pulled those kinds of characters into this too. But
Yeah.
I didn't want I wanted my characters uh, albatross to be more metaphorical and less physical for hunger or for blood. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's cool that, we were able to tie in the Universal monsters because Universal monsters are very, very underrated and very, very underused. And I definitely think there's room for them to be modernized, in today's day and age to be reintroduced into a whole new fan base. And
For sure.
if the way we can do it the correct way is through comics, then let's do it through comics. Because
100%.
the idea they had to launch the Universal movie universe in theory was awesome, but the
Hmm.
fact that they started with the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, I think was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a bit of a misfire, and
Yeah, for sure.
I've never seen it. I've heard nothing but poor reviews, and so
Same.
I just have stayed the hell away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of having Russell Crowe as like Dr. Jekyll, because I've never seen it either. I've just heard about it.
Yeah,
I think was kind of a cool idea, and he was kind of
yeah,
like the guy that would go between all the different movies and tie them all together. So kind of like to me, it kind of felt like a Nick Fury, Sam Jackson type character in the MCU,
yep,
which I think could have worked out perfectly. I just think
yeah.
it was a weird way to go. Plus, the way they named it, I think everyone kind of confused it with the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, and
Yep.
so just there was just so much mess with it. But
Yeah.
it's cool that, to for you, being a fan of the Universal monsters, not utilizing, the same monsters that everybody does, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Dracula, the ones that get used all the time. It's cool to see, the Mummy get used. It would be cool to have my wife's a big fan of the Universal monsters as well, and her favorite is Gilman, so it'd be kind of cool
Nice.
to have him be brought back too. So
Yep.
that's very, very cool.
I do have, so I have my own versions, right? So in Wolf She Cried, the first 72 page OGN that I put out back in 23,
Hmm.
um, I have a werewolf character. Klaus von Wolfenberg is my werewolf. But and he's like a tycoon. He's a big business person. And he's also kind of my Jekyll and Hyde in that when he transforms into a werewolf, he becomes this crazy motorcycle riding dude. And
Nice.
when he's human, he's a very uptight businessman. So like
Okay.
it's a little of both.
That's
Um,
cool.
and then I also have my vampire Diego, who's in Fangs and Brimstone. He's kind of my Dracula. Uh, he's a vampire basically. And then I do have obviously have the Mummy, and then I have plans for a Gilman, but I can't say who it's going to be or when you're going to see it because it's going to be a big surprise with big ramifications for Bix. So that's a story that we're going to be telling in a couple of years. Well, I have to build up to it and kind of earn it,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
I do also have a Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, sort of, in that in again in Wolf She Cried we introduced Dr. Francis Stein, who is also he's a scientist, but he's also a gunslinger. He always wanted to be a sharpshooter when he was a kid,
Oh, that's
a
cool.
gunfighter. So he and his sister Francine was a world famous actress and singer who got a very rare genetic disorder and her body was crumbling apart and no one could figure out what was wrong. So he ended up taking her brain and putting it into a robot body that he had been building. So that's kind of my Frankenstein, my Dr. Frankenstein and my Frankenstein's monster. Um,
Nice.
little, again, it's like you said, it's not the traditional one. I just wanted a little, I wanted those themes there or those ideas there, those archetypes there,
Yeah.
and just put a little different spin on it.
And that I think it works perfectly. That's a cool idea. So, right now you're getting ready to gear up to launch the Kickstarter for issue 4.
Yep.
Um, do you have only what am I trying to say? What's your plan for Bixby? Do you have like a certain amount of issues before you're done? Or are you just going to keep putting out issues as long as you possibly can? What's kind of the plan for that?
As long as people keep buying them, I plan on keep making them. So,
Very cool.
I, like you said, this is the fourth issue of Fangs and Brimstone. I do also have that one and done OGN that I put out first because I didn't know if I was going to make any more. That was like my
Yeah,
first try at it. I didn't want to go too big. I didn't want to do a full 5 or 6 issue series, but I wanted to do more than just a one issue. So I wanted to be able to tell a little bit bigger story. And once Heather Antos, my editor, came on board, I felt like I was in good hands and I would be able to do a 72 pager. It's technically a 60 pager and then a backup story, but so when I say 72 pager, it sounds a little disingenuous, but um, yeah, so I did that one, and then it it funded pretty well, and so I got the bug, and so we've been doing this series, a 6 issue story arc for this, and then I've got some ideas what we're going to do beyond that. This will take us through 2027 to get the other because I do about two a year. It's not my day job, and it's also not free because
yeah,
I work with a bunch of really talented folks, and I believe in paying them what they're worth, right? So
for sure.
Heather works for IDW, former editor at Marvel. Gonzalo Martinez, my penciler, is based in Chile, but he is a professional. He's not published much here. And then Arthur Hesley, our colorist, when I started, was just getting going, and now he's a colorist for Marvel. So I love the team that we're working with, and I asked them right before because I just sent out the script number 5 to Heather to review, and I asked the rest of the team. I'm like, hey, is everybody still on board? And so everyone gave a thumbs up. So we're gonna keep going.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
just to go back a little bit, when you had talked about the Great Lakes Avengers,
Yeah.
my friend Megan, who hosts the Vigilante Vibes podcast, it's a podcast all mostly about Marvel stuff, and she
Okay.
kind of deep dives into different characters about, in throughout the Marvel universe. She recently did an episode about the Great Lakes Avengers. So
Nice.
the people listening to this, if you want to know more about the Great Lakes Avengers, go check out the Vigilante Vibes podcast, and my friend Megan will tell you all about them. Plus,
Nice.
if you've ever heard of the band Kirby Crackle, they did a song called The Great Lakes Avengers. I don't know if
Nice.
you've heard that song before, but
I have not.
it's
I'm gonna
pretty
check it out though.
it's pretty fantastic. It's kind of like they're kind of like a poppy rock band.
Okay.
But it's a lot of their older stuff is very heavily comics inspired. Like
Nice.
they have one called X-Men Pool Party where they just sing about what it would be like to have a pool party at the mansion. But
Nice.
Kyle is a great guy. They're a great band. I just want to give a couple quick little shout outs there.
That's awesome.
So, when you sit down to think of the stories for Bix, do you pull ideas from anything specific? Do you know, it sounds like you've kind of been, working your way to get your own version of the Universal monsters incorporated into the stories, but when you're sitting down to write, issue 5 you said just about done, but when you're sitting down to write issue 6, even though I know you kind of already have the idea in mind of what you're going to do,
Yeah.
like where do you pull the inspiration for that from?
So for the first one, for Wolf She Cried, I structured it. I knew I wanted to tell a more traditional noir detective story, at least in structure. So
Yeah,
I thought about, I love noir detective stories, whether it's movies like Chinatown or some old school stuff like Maltese Falcon. I also love Dashiell Hammett novels. I love Raymond Chandler novels. I mean, those are two of the most popular ones.
sure.
But so looking back and thinking back as to how those are structured, and there's usually like, as in any genre, there's like four or five plots that keep getting used over and over again, right? So you
Yeah.
got the rich person who's missing somebody, or you've got the kidnapping, or you've got the secret that somebody wants to keep, and or it's like a family secret, or what have you, or it's corporate greed. Like there's little pockets that keep getting reused in different ways, and so I chose the corporate greed slash family secret path for that first one. And I stayed pretty true to, it's a 3 act story broken up into, I think, 7 or 8 chapters. And so I was pulling ideas basically from Raymond Chandler, more or
Right.
less, right?
Yeah.
So like you said earlier, like we are some of our parts, right? So all my influences kind of bubble up when you're trying to think about stuff, right? So I had the idea um, for what became the plot of Wolf She Cried years and years ago for something else, and it was in my notebook. And I was looking through it, and I was like, "Hey, I still kind of like this idea. What if so there was somebody in a family of werewolves who wasn't a werewolf and really felt shunned by their family? What would they do to try and feel accepted amongst their family?" And so that became the basis of the plot for this, with
Nice.
Bix being our way into that story. It's a very thin character arc, as there are in most noir stories, right? So it's
Sure.
really just at the end of this, we find out a little bit about how Bix became a mummy, what happened to his girlfriend, why he's a miserable son of a bitch, and that's kind of it. And it's at the end, he kind of just, we find out that like he can't say no to a woman in trouble. Like it's very kind of old school. He's old school.
Yeah.
That's basically it. And then the idea for the new story for Fangs and Brimstone kind of came out of thin air. So I wanted to do something that was more of a buddy story. So because I liked this character Diego so much, he had one scene in the first graphic novel, and I knew I had been planning him for years. I knew he was going to be in a band. I knew he was going to be kind of a wise ass. I knew he was going to be kind of a lovable goof. And so I thought that would be fun to play off of Bix. And so,
Yeah.
so that was the core of the idea. But I'm like, okay, well, what's going to be the mystery? What's going to be the story? And based on what the headlines were back in 2000, well, frankly, for the last 10 years. what the headlines have been kind
Yeah.
of informed part of the storyline, which is within the city, there's a corrupt mayor trying to get rid of the supernatural population that has moved there, of which Bix and Diego are members, right? And
Right.
like any population, there are good and bad, and people, there are a lot of members, citizens who support the mayor and want to get all these people out because they view them all as bad. Um, and so that's kind of like the backstory of what's happening in the environment around them. And it turns out then that somebody is bumping off people in the mayor's reelection campaign. So now all the supernatural people in the city become suspects. And so Bix is trying to figure out who's doing it. And then there's a little wrinkle, which is that these murders are being committed with ancient daggers owned by Bix's brother 100 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so we start to get some family drama. His brother has been missing for 90 plus years, presumed dead. I no spoilers. He doesn't come back in this story. It's not the last page. We don't open it up and his brother's back. But we get to find out, you know, for some reason, at the beginning of the story, Bix wants nothing to do with this case and finds out that these daggers are involved, and we can't understand why this guy who's usually so headstrong can't seem to get his shit together. Like through Diego's eyes, he's like, "Wait, this is weird. Bix is acting strange." So this has a better character arc for Bix in that he's actually trying to overcome some some mental issues that he's had, some trauma from his past. So um, I, the overall thing is he's going to learn that expressing your feelings and being able to talk about uncomfortable things can be healthy for you. And that really
Yeah.
sounds like an after school special, and it's really not. Um, I'm not that quite that preachy, but that's in it in a
Right.
nutshell, right? So
Yeah.
I do believe, and I've said this elsewhere and in my newsletter, that I think if everybody could get past the stigma of being able to talk about some of their deep down traumatic shit that bothers them,
Yeah.
the whole world would be a much better place.
Oh,
And
for sure.
if someone like Bix, who grew up in the Depression, fought in World War II, and was taught to push that shit down, can learn that lesson, I think there's hope for us all.
For sure. And it doesn't sound that far-fetched, honestly, because if you think about it, he's a guy from the 30s, and back then,
Right.
guys were always told guys aren't allowed to have feelings, and
That's
if
right.
you have feelings, you don't tell anybody about them, that's for sure. And so the fact that, he's guys from back then, I would imagine are pretty curmudgeonly and pretty bitter and just about everything really. And
Yeah.
the fact that he's been alive for this long, I am sure he's starting to realize I can either be a miserable old bastard forever, or I can eventually like conform to the times and
Right.
realize that it's okay to talk about that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, totally. Like I think about my grandfather, right? He fought in World
Right.
War II, and he would never, not just the war, he would never talk about his feelings, right? Like
Yeah.
he would point out when he was pissed, of course, but that's about
Yeah.
it. Like he's not going to talk about things that make him uncomfortable because that's weird and that's
Right.
strange. And even my grandmother wouldn't either. Like it's just you don't talk about those things. It's only been like, within our lifetime that some people are more comfortable with talking about those things.
Yeah.
So not everybody. And
Definitely not everybody.
yeah, and some people to different degrees, right?
Yep.
So, and I totally get that. Like not everybody wants to share. I'm
For
not
sure.
here to tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah.
That's for my psychiatrist. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's for
I
the
do it.
other. That's for the
Yeah,
podcast after this one, right?
that's right. Yeah, I lied. I do have a heart out. Just kidding.
Very cool. So we've got the Kickstarter, like we mentioned, it's coming out pretty soon. I apologize, I should have asked before. I know when it's supposed to end. I just didn't really catch when it's supposed to start. I'd imagine it's pretty soon though, right?
It's going to launch on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Perfect. That actually will work out great because by the time we're recording this, it's the 11th and it'll drop on the 18th. So it'll actually drop the day
Beautiful.
after. So that works out perfectly.
Love it.
So by the time you're listening to this, Bixby Grant issue 1 through 4 will already be out. So make sure you go check it out. We'll put the links all over the place so you guys can find it. Um, so talking about the Kickstarter, it looks like you've got at least issues 1 through 4 on there so people can
Yep.
get caught up on issues that they missed before, which I always think is a cool thing to do because sometimes you don't hear about cool Kickstarters like this until it's already like, a few issues deep. So the fact that you can catch up is a super cool idea.
Yep.
But what do you have, available in this next Kickstarter that you want to talk about, like additional like rewards and stuff that you can talk about? We don't want to talk about the stretch goals, of course, because those will be
Right.
unlocked eventually, but the ones that, are already going to
Right.
be announced, what do you have that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So we do have a couple early bird specials. So if you're hearing this on the early side of the 18th, you can still get these things. If you back any of the physical rewards, so if you buy a single issue, issue number 4, or if you buy the print version of the catch-up edition, like you just mentioned, which is all the back issues, including the new one, or you buy the all 3 variant covers package because we have a great cover by Declan Shalvey. We have a great cover by Elsa Charretier, who are two of my favorite artists working today. And then, of course, we have the great cover by interior artist Gonzalo Martinez. If you buy any of those products, you will get your choice of a free enamel pin of Diego, which I can show you right here, our, our Rockabilly Vampire.
Billy Vampire, right on.
Yep. Or you'll get a poster, a 20 by 30 fold out poster of the Declan Shalvey cover, which looks pretty bitchin'. Um,
Absolutely.
and then if you're not able to take it, you also get a discount, by the way, if you're within the first 24 hours. You get like, depending on which tier, you could save between $2 and $10. Um, uh, the other stuff, if you're not part of the early bird, you could still buy a poster, you could still buy a pin, but you could also get we have some really awesome sketch tiers. So you can get a pencil sketch plus the book, an inked sketch plus the book, or a color marker sketch, all by interior artist Gonzalo Martinez, which are pretty awesome. They're 9 by 12. They're really nice. They're done on Bristol board, and they look sweet framed. We did some inked ones on the last campaign, and now we've added some pencil ones and some marker ones. So there's some different price points for people.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So like he said, we've got it coming out on St. Patrick's Day, so the day before this launch, so it's already out at this point, so make sure you check it out. Tell your friends, do whatever you can to help spread the word because the world needs more monsters and the world needs more strange, weird stories. So let's help get these made so he can keep making Bixby forever. So before I let you go, after this campaign wraps up, even though this campaign really hasn't even started yet,
Yeah.
um, what's next for you that you can talk about?
Well, as I mentioned, well, I'm already ramping up for the next issue, which will be out in the fall. So I
Okay.
don't have a hard date, but the issue 5 will be available on Kickstarter probably mid-September,
Okay.
which is the same time we did it last year, just in time for spooky season. We
Right
do
on.
pretty well. We do pretty well in the fall. So the script is with the editor, with Heather right now, and then we're hoping to start the art probably in the 1st of April. And I'll be able to start unveiling some covers and some interior art I like to share in my newsletter. If you go to Substack and look me up, it's called Robots, Ninjas, and Monkeys. And
Interesting.
I put out preview. I put out a newsletter every week. I give away a hardcover edition of the original graphic novel, Wolf She Cried. It's a newsletter exclusive. I give one free to a random newsletter subscriber once a month. But you can also get advanced previews and sketches and see kind of work in progress stuff there too.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so one last thing before I let you go. I
Yeah.
usually like to ask the person I'm talking to share a little bit of advice with the listening audience. So,
Okay.
what's a parting piece of advice you'd give for other creatives or other creators out there who are wanting to do stuff?
Hmm. Like constructive, like about the process or just in general?
Anything.
Okay. First thing that pops to my head is it's going to take time. Like I started doing this 5 years ago, and I'm on my fifth issue, basically, more or less, if you count the graphic novel I did.
Yeah,
And it takes time. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna fuck it up. Surround yourself not with yes people, but with people that you trust who are encouraging, and hopefully also know what they're talking about. Don't just show it to your friends. Um, but again, it's you're gonna get frustrated. It's gonna take time. Get supportive people in place, and keep moving forward.
very cool. That's great advice. And yeah, it doesn't help you to have yes men friends.
Nope.
Those people don't help you at all. So,
Nope.
because I've had those friends in my life, and you try to look for any kind of constructive criticism or feedback from them, and if they disagree with everything you say, that makes you feel kind of cool that hey, this
Yeah,
person thinks I'm awesome, but at the same time, that doesn't help you grow as a person. So
that's right.
it's really important to get that. So that's very, very cool.
And there's
Um,
a lot of ways to get feedback from people, even if
yeah.
it's strangers. You can join a Discord server with other writers. You can,
Mhm.
there's a lot of online communities. There's comicsexperience.com has classes, and for like 20 bucks a month or maybe even less now. I think they dropped the price. You can join that community and put your scripts up or your art up and have people take a look at it and give you constructive feedback. There's so many different ways to do it now. So I would encourage everybody to, if you're still developing your skills and aren't sure about it, that's a really good way to plug in and get people who are like-minded and not yes men to give you real feedback. And you have to be open to it as well. So,
Yeah. That's also the hard part is because I've been a part of, giving feedback before, and if you're going to take it personal, it makes it a lot worse. Like it's not going to be
yeah,
helpful for anybody.
right,
So yeah, that's definitely also important too, is making sure that if you're going to ask for feedback, make sure you're willing to actually want to get feedback and not just take offense.
right,
Very
exactly.
important.
Yep.
Now, other than your Substack, which is the one of the most awesome sounding Substack names I've ever heard ever, which is
Thanks.
awesome. Where else can people find you on the internet to kind of stay up to date with what's coming from you?
I'm on Facebook. You can find me at Patrick Coyle, writer artist. I'm also on Insta at Patrick Coyle 71. And where else? I'm on Blue Sky, but not regularly. I'm not on X anymore. Those are probably the main ones. But I would encourage you, like I'm trying to get people to hop on the Substack because I ask people to give feedback, and so we can chat and talk that way, rather than just have it go into the void of social media where it just gets lost, and people also chime in with negative shit that nobody wants to hear. So I'm trying to make it a fun place where we can all talk about stuff that we like.
I get that because yeah, social media is the pit sometimes. Like
Oh,
it's hard
yeah,
and like you need to, be on there to promote yourself, of course, but
right.
it's so exhausting sometimes. And yeah, I'm not on X either. I used to be on Blue Sky a ton when
Yeah,
it first came out, but now it seems like it went from being a really cool place to being kind of like a pretty negative, bitter place for the most part too. So
yeah,
that's kind of a bummer.
it
Um,
is.
But for me, I want to thank Polygon Horizon. Their song Pizza Force is the song we use for the show. They're a great band and it's a fantastic song. So go check them out on Bandcamp and SoundCloud. Go show them some support. Fueled by Weird, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Actually, I'm on Threads too, and Threads is fantastic. If you've never been there, it's kind of awesome. I don't mention that enough. And shoot me an email at feelbyweird@gmail.com. You can come chat up with a bunch of stuff with me. You can get on the show, anything you want to do. Find the show Feel by Weird on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. And for any of these links, or if you forget them, or if I missed one, which I probably did, check out my Linktree, just at Linktree at Feel by Weird. You'll find all the links there. Um, my friend Hassel Hutchinson, he's got his channel, the Nerdy Man Room Show. He does the Nerdy Man Room Show card subject to change, and which is like a what if for pro wrestling. He does a lot of what if scenarios. It's kind of awesome. He does unboxings too. He has lots of cool stuff. Go check him out. Also, Big Rob and Big Rob's House of Entertainment and No Chinese Food. He does a lot of cool toy hauls and stuff there. The two of us, or all three of us, along with our friend Monster, we make up the Stay Weird Network. We're a podcast network dedicated to try to bring some awesome back to the internet. Because, like we mentioned before, the internet kind of sucks sometimes, and we want to try to make it a little bit better of a place. Check us out on YouTube at Stay Weird Network, and we're also on Instagram. And also shoot us an email at stayweirdnetwork@gmail.com. Now, if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends and word of mouth, because word of mouth is my friend. And remember, kids, it's only weird if you make it weird. So make it real weird. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me tonight, man.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a blast.
Absolutely.